Hey, everyone. What is going on? Lauren Sisler here with AL.com, welcoming you into our Week 12 SEC Insider, brought to you by our sponsors, All South Appliance. And today, hanging out here in the beautiful showroom with my multitude of kitchens and readers, all sorts of stuff here in the kitchen. So, what? Just in time for holidays, you want to do a little remodel? They got sales galore. Perfect place to stop by right over here on Lakeshore Parkway. Got some great deals going on. So, Gianna Hahn now joining me to talk a little football. We're going to recap the Auburn game against Texas A&M as they closed out what would have been, I guess, the regular season. So it's kind of weird how things have shaken up, but this was supposed to be the conclusion of the regular season. Now they will play a makeup game against Mississippi State. But we got to recap this one first. Auburn falling 31-20. And, here's the deal. There were some good things that we saw out there, and then there were obviously some not so good things. We're talking about the number 5 team in the country, Texas A&M, coming to Jordan-Hare Stadium. We've seen an Auburn team perform much different, kind of Jekyll and Hyde on the road versus at home. Just wanted to kind of get your thoughts, a recap of what you saw, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, so like you said, a little bit of everything, and a lot of the stuff just seemed to cancel itself out. So let's just start with Bo Nix, for example. He had 2 big missed touchdown throws that could have won the game. That's 14 points right there. But then you also look at the fact that he's also responsible for 14 of those points. He's the one who rushed in those touchdowns on plays that they were insane. Of course, you have the one where it looked like he'd been eaten by 5 different guys, and all of a sudden he just appears and then ends up in the end zone. And then the other touchdown, he also set up with a very similar play where they all came rushing at him. It looked like he was just done for, and then somehow he picked up over 20 yards. So it kind of balances out where it's he had some really bad mistakes, but he also was the reason they were in the end zone a bunch of the times. So that's Bo Nix there, kind of the rest of the Auburn team. There were good things and there were bad things. I've heard the other reporters say, the ones who've been here much longer than me, they'd never seen such a bad defensive performance. And yet somehow they only lost 11 points to the number 5 team, and they're unranked. So there's just a lot of good and a lot of bad. And it just kind of seems like the story of the season, Again, the offensive line missing some of their starters, the running backs, Tank Bigsby is back, but still probably not full strength. So it's just been the story of the season where you see that they can do so much better, but they just don't live up to it. And there are a lot of things you could blame it on. I guess the question is, at what point are they just excuses, and do you need to actually improve on it, because we are at the end of the season? So I don't know. It was just a frustrating game to watch if you're an Auburn fan, because you kind of got a taste of what could have been, especially at that fourth quarter where they had a chance to win the game and then went 3-and-out twice. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because Auburn's record definitely deserves to have them unranked, but I also think they have the talent to beat a lot of ranked teams. So.
Yeah, so that begs the question. 5-4 now on the season. A win against Mississippi State on the road would conclude them at 6-4 for the regular season. So you kind of mentioned it. Sort of the narrative this year, the story of Auburn's kind of 2020 season. So in this very unusual 2020 season, would you consider 6-4 to be? Where does that stand on the scale? And obviously, it's not. It's probably not where Auburn fans want things to be. And, anytime you have 4 losses, it's not acceptable in the SEC per se, but with things kind of being where they are, very strange this year, would 6-4 be considered commendable, or how do you think that's viewed in the minds of most?
So here's the thing. 6-4 is not a good season because of the fact that they're so much better than what a 6-4 record says. Now, keep in mind, 3 of those losses were to ranked teams, and they were losses that Auburn probably would have had in a normal season. I don't know if you want to say respectable losses, because Auburn fans never want to lose to Alabama or Georgia, right? But those are all ones where it's okay, yeah, that's a really good team. The problem there is that South Carolina loss. There was no reason they should have lost that game. in any way, shape, or form. They almost won it in that last minute, but there are really no words to that loss. I mean, that team just fired their coach and you lost to them. So that's not good. Now, I'm sure a lot of people have seen the comments from Gus Malzahn that 6-4, a solid year, and they took a lot of exception to that. I think what Gus really meant, and he clarified this last night, was this is where they're at right now. This is what they're going to do. Like, it's next game up. And he also took into account a lot of the other things that went wrong. Yeah, everyone had the problem of no fall camp, no non-conference games, but with Auburn's youth, and he pointed out that the most inexperienced team, that kind of exacerbates that problem. And so I actually went and I looked up on the starters, or among the starters, there are only, depending on the day, one senior starter on offense and 3 to 4 on defense. And then there's a good, in comparison, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's like 8 or 9 players that never had starting experience before this year. So I get it. Once again, when is it just excuse and when does it count? But overall, Gus did say that his expectation is to win championships, and he doesn't normally do this, but he looked ahead to the future, and he's saying that next year he has a lot of hope because all those players that came in without any experience, without fall camp, now they're going to have a full season, and not just any season, but a season SEC experience under their belts. There's going to be some of that chemistry that wasn't there this year. And the injuries that Auburn suffered, that was just unlucky, and that may happen next year, may not. But when it comes to experience, they will have that. So I guess, like, I want to be happy with 6-4 personally, especially that fourth loss, that South Carolina loss. But the other 3, I think you can't beat up yourself too much, other than the fact that they could have beaten Texas A&M.
Yeah, no doubt, because I definitely think that, defensively they weren't able to put the stop to Kellen Mond, to the bleeding, because they absolutely had a chance to go out and win that one in the fourth quarter. Obviously didn't swing in their favor. And that was with some somewhat pedestrian numbers offensively, and they could still, kind of come back and take care of business. And like you said, Bo Nix obviously doing some great things, especially on his feet, looked good at times, but obviously wasn't able to connect. And then, of course, the Zacoby McClain potential interception certainly could have shifted things once again. So some missed opportunities, definitely posing some frustration. So with that being said, right now 5-4 on the season, a win against Mississippi State next week makes them 6-4. So Gianna, that leads to the next question of best and worst case scenarios for this Auburn football team. Next week, win or lose, what does that look like, I guess, for the postseason? And, again, whatever ends up happening this upcoming week against Mississippi State is going to dictate that record and certainly change the mindset for many. But, even a win next week against Mississippi State, getting to that 6-4 record, where does that keep people, and what does that mean for them moving forward, obviously, into the bowl season?
Yeah, obviously, worst case scenario is losing and going 5-5. I don't think that's what anyone wants, although, yeah, no, that's just straight up not what anyone wants, and that would be really bad for a lot of people involved. Now, 6-4, just looking at that, if you win, best and worst case scenarios there. So, best case scenario is that you're 6-4, you get a decent bowl game, you go and you perform well, so you're 7-4 on the season, have something to work off of, maybe get some momentum heading into next year. And then next year, you have all your players, like I talked about, who can return and are experienced players. You have them coming back, and they've got that extra experience under their belt. They've got that chemistry, and you're ready to go for a really solid season. Maybe get that Iron Bowl upset. Maybe, possibilities are endless. But the other thing that you want to look at, the worst case scenario, is, okay, you got a lot of juniors on this team. You're allowed to declare for the draft. So they could decide that this wasn't the season they wanted, and they want to come back and they want to go out on a better note. Or you could have them saying, nope, this is it, I'm out. That was not a good season. I don't want to risk getting hurt, and you leave. And now make that even worse, you might have them deciding that before the bowl game. So then you're going into the bowl game possibly without a bunch of players, and you get a loss there. Or And this is pure speculation, but how much power do the players have to say, hey, we don't want to go risk that for our poor season, and Auburn doesn't go to a bowl game? Not really sure. We don't really know about the bowl games yet, but I mean, that could be a possibility. Why do you want to go risk injury and possibly catching COVID in a strange city against a team that's not your conference? And then the thing that can take it to the worst scenario is Auburn's recruiting class is not in a great place right now. Gus Malzahn, he's still optimistic because they're kind of making the last minute push. If you lose or don't look good against Mississippi, if you don't go out and completely crush them, what are the chances that those guys on the fence decide to go with the other school that they're thinking about? And that's really when you start seeing problems, because that leads to not just one poor season, but not much hope for the future. So that's if you want to get real negative on this nice Monday. But Auburn, they're just focused on going out there and taking care of business, and hopefully they can get a little bit of momentum, like I said, and turn things around heading into next season.
Yeah, and I think you make really good points, Gianna, there. And, here's the deal. Bottom line is a lot of teams are in the same boat right now. And again, I know that I'm watching the comments come down. There's a lot of, obviously negativity and people feeling like there needs to be a change. And, certainly, respect the opinions of everyone in that regard. But also, just talking to coaches, I've covered several games in the SEC, outside the SEC, across the country. And a lot of coaches are experiencing the same frustration, especially because of this year being so unique, so different. You don't even know what you have coming back right now. The early signing period is upon us, right? And you don't even quite know who's going to stay, who's going to go from a standpoint of the juniors that are going to leave. And then, of course, the transfer portal is wide open. There are no rules and regulations. You jump in that transfer portal, you can go anywhere. So, I mean, you could literally end up right up the road. If you're a Mississippi player, you might go to Mississippi State. Like, there is no holds bar at this point. So everything is chaotic, and it could certainly have a domino effect for years to come. And you pointed that out, that this is not just like how this affects the rest of this season and, into next season. This could have an effect positively or negatively for years to come. And so it's something that coaches are really trying to have to figure out. It hasn't been easy. I've heard coaches just talk about this year has been significantly different in the fact that they aren't even at this point coaching. They're basically depth chart managers. They're managing the game. They're managing their players, their roster, their people, because that's all they can do when they don't know what they have week to week, obviously with testing, contact tracing, and then, of course, opt-outs, and certainly, transfers or guys deciding that they're going to head to the NFL. So there's a lot of moving parts here, a lot of things to unpack. So we'll certainly keep an eye on it. Gianna, we appreciate your insight as always, and want to say a big thank you to our sponsor, All South Appliance, proud sponsor of SEC Insider. I'm hanging out here in their beautiful showroom. We invite you to visit us here in the showroom on Lakeshore Parkway in Birmingham, across the state of Alabama, Tennessee, and Florida. And, of course, you can visit us online at myallsouth.com.